No, I'm not. Yeah, there are some stories a bit like that, but quite often the tumours are just where the cell phone antenna's been in the side of the head that the person has been holding his phone most. So a lot of the, so that's really quite important. You know, there's anecdotal stuff like that. Some of it's in the literature, but generally it's anecdotal.
Well, what has been your experience through your research and your study? What has been your experience in terms of encountering any examples of radiation damage that is believed to have come from cell phones?
Well, I think we've got to look at the published scientific papers, and there are plenty of them now that show that there are far more brain tumours on the side of the head that you more commonly hold your phone. If you're a heavy-ish user, well, actually I wouldn't say heavy, if you're a medium-ish user, then you're in brain tumours over 10 years use. Now, that's still a small number, so we're still not going to see this pandemic of brain tumours. The problem is that most of us live in the now. We might live in the 2 or 3 years from now, but we don't live 15 years from now. So everybody's finding it convenient. Business is finding it really good to be able to contact their employees and track them and keep them up running on the treadmill all the time. Government's quite pleased because it's actually phones are one of the few ways of taking money off people without people objecting. It's one of the few things people don't really object to is their phone bills, their mobile phone, cell phone bills. So nobody's wanting to actually think about what's going to happen in 30 years' time.
Well, the kind of radiation damage that you at least anticipate from cell phones, is such damage, is that kind of damage repairable? Is it fixable?
No, well, I mean, some of it is. If you get a brain tumour, if you get a aggressive glioma, then no, the chances you'll live 2 to 3 years is, you know, most people don't live more than 2 to 3 years after getting them. Some brain tumours, like meningiomas, are fairly well cured. You have an operation, but generally it doesn't kill you. It does affect your future life, but it doesn't kill you.
Well, when I say reparable, I mean, even if you're able to get rid of the damage, I presume this type of damage causes damage in other areas of your body.
Well, in other areas of your life, if it affects your brain. I mean, yeah. But I'm actually more concerned about, particularly with young people, if you look at the published effects of, this isn't necessarily cell phone use, this is just being around them a lot. What they are sleep disturbance, tiredness, depression, headaches. These are in lots of papers around the world. Disturbance of concentration, memory, learning difficulties, those sort of things, sleep problems. Now that's exactly what we're seeing in school, and we've got this enormous rise in attention deficit problems, ADHD, and actually autism. Autism is soaring, particularly in the States. We don't know what causes it. There are various ideas of things in vaccines and various things. Nothing really matches. The only thing that sort of maps onto it quite closely is this big explosion in cell phone use and towers around all of us and our sort of saturation with these new modern communication signals. Now, we don't know whether the attention deficit is due to that. But when you look at the tests on groups of people, headaches, memory problems, forgetfulness, tiredness, it sort of maps into the same sort of area. And therefore it's the one thing I really think we shouldn't be doing to our young people.
As I listen to you, I start to wonder, what about, like me, I don't use cell phones very much. I do have a cell phone. I don't normally carry it. When I go out, I take it with me. When I come back, I remove it and I just put it down on the table and leave it someplace. But are people like me in danger from ambient exposure? In other words, everybody's got cell phones all the time. So is that radiation pulsing into people who are just nearby, or does it have to be right there against the body to be potentially damaging?
No, it is people nearby, and in some ways it's got worse in that it's got worse from 2 points. One about keeping it on your belt, and well done for turning the phone round. A lot of modern phones that I've looked at put out like 5 times the amount of energy out of the back of the phone than they put out of the front of the phone with the display and the keypad. So if you have the phone the wrong way round, you get like at least 5 times as much energy coming out that way. I've seen some that are even like tenfold now because they're trying to reduce the amount that goes into the head when you use it normally. So most of the energies they're trying to direct out the back. So if you're sitting next to someone on a bus or a train and they're using a cell phone for a long period, despite the fact you're going to be, 6 inches, 8 inches away from them, you will be probably getting more radiation than they are if they're holding the phone on the side of their head closest to you. So yes, it is around us, but obviously you get far more if you're carrying the phone.
Right. But I mean, it is actually affecting me, even if it's not my phone, is what you're saying. That's amazing. Is the nature of this radiation such that devices could be equipped with some kind of, protective shielding? And if that is a viable possibility, why isn't it being done?
When you're using them, they can be, and the phones are, as I say, they're getting better. They're designed to put more out the back than the front. So if you hold it normally, a lot of the radiation is actually going away from you. The problem is the radiation has to get away from you to get to the base station. Now, if you're in a city area where like in many cities now, there's a base station every 50 meters, every 50 yards or so, that they're that common. So, and the phone can actually work, a good modern mobile phone can work at a lower power than a cordless phone. So, to a certain extent, having lots of little low-powered base stations around you makes the phone work safer than a cordless phone works. But of course, a lot of the time, if you're in a motor vehicle, you're in a steel shell, the phone can't get its signal out very easily, only through the windows. And a lot of the windows now have got thermal glass in, which doesn't allow microwaves out very well. So the phone's working at full power. You're trying to use it from a car. It's in there blasting out its 1 or 2 watts. Whereas if you stood outside the car on the sidewalk, and there's a base station nearby, it'll turn itself down 1,000-fold to save the battery and to stop. If there's too many cell phones making too much noise, they interfere with each other, so they can turn themselves down 1,000-fold. So, but if you try to use it inside a car or inside a big building, then the phone's going to work. If you've only got 1 or 2 bars of signal strength on your phone, it works hundreds of times more strongly than if it's got 4 or 5 or however many bars your phone's got. But if it's showing a full signal strength, it turns itself right down. So they're trying to make those improvements.
But what I'm trying to determine is there a way, maybe someone can devise a cell phone holder. Is there a way to shield the radiation without blocking the signal?
Not really. What you're doing with your belt, some of the clips, like the BlackBerry clip, RIM for BlackBerries, make a belt clip that's shielded on the side next to your body, and you put it in like you are now with the face of the phone facing your body, and actually very little of the radiation goes into your body. It almost all goes away. But that doesn't change it when you pull the thing out to use it, of course. It's then got to send the radiation out. So you can't shield that, really. Okay. All you can hope to do is to direct it away from you.
Now, how extensive is the problem? Does it affect all cell phones or only those manufactured by certain companies? Are some worse than others?
No, it affects all cell phones. There's been a whole lot about a thing called SAR, specific absorbed radiation, which is how much energy gets absorbed by the body. It's how cell phones are tested, what I was talking about earlier. And I think it's a big red herring. It's actually, the problem is what way they test them is it's the phone working at its hardest, at full power. Well, what it doesn't tell you is that actually the phone working at full power with a high SAR may actually, most of the time, be one of the lowest SAR phones in normal use, because it's an efficient phone at getting its signal out, therefore it can turn its transmit power right down. And some of the early Nokias were like that. They were right up at the top of the SAR range, but when you actually measured the SAR under normal use, they were down at the bottom of the SAR range because they had a really efficient antenna. So it really affects all cell phones. People should just be sensible and not sit there for hours. And if they really want to sit and jaw on the phone for hours, use a landline, use an old-fashioned wired telephone.
Unfortunately, more and more people have no landlines. I run into that all the time where people don't have a landline, and it's very, very frustrating. And I, for one, think that it's not a good idea. How do people find out more information about this important topic?
There's a mass on the internet now. There's my site, which is called powerwatch.org.uk. or one word, powerwatch.org.uk, and that's got links to other sites. But there's a lot of stuff out there now, quite good stuff, showing this sort of things that we're talking about.
Well, I have to tell you that I'm not happy to hear about this, but I'm very pleased that there are people out there who are getting this information out. That website, by the way, folks, it's www.powerwatch.org.uk. Why don't you tell us about PowerWatch? You founded this some 20-plus years ago.
Yeah, it was founded actually not to do with cell phones at all. It was to do with power lines and cancer, child cancer under power lines. And gradually over time, we've concentrated more on the microwaves as they've come up. In fact, near the beginning, we were asked to go and measure the women at Greenham Common that were protesting about a US air base in the UK at Greenham Common and saying they were being zapped. And the Americans were trying out some of their early non-lethal weapons, which used microwaves, just the same as cell phones, but slightly higher power, to disorient people. And we've got pictures of these on the things around at Greenham Common. And I had that confirmed by the UK Home Office at a conference many years later. So that's made me realise just how dangerous these were.
What did you find when you went and you checked out?
When we trekked out there, the women were being exposed to these pulsed microwaves, which are not dissimilar to what comes out of a mobile phone. They're pulsed at a slightly different rate to have more psychoactive effects, make you feel more disoriented and irritable. And the guy from the UK Home Office said that he wouldn't let his men stand where the women were. He thought it was dangerous. And these things at the time were completely covert, of course. Now the Pentagon's actually put some of them on Humvees and things, and they've actually demonstrated the effect of these pulse microwave things. They can drop people at several hundred yards away now from Humvee-mounted microwave dishes, and that's public domain.
Yeah, and inevitably anything at all, any technology at all, is used on some level by military. It always seems to be conscripted for military use. My guest has been Alasdair Phillips, engineer, scientist, and activist and advocate of safety concerning the radiation emitted by cell phones. You want to check out more about this? You really ought to. www.powerwatch.org.uk. powerwatch.org.uk. Alasdair, I really appreciate your taking the time to come on with us and to speak with me about this issue. I feel I know a lot more now than I did about an hour ago.
Thank you, Brent. Yes, I've enjoyed it. And people shouldn't panic. I think it's just sensible use, and particularly with their children and what they buy them for Christmas, and not letting children put them under their pillows at night, which a lot of them do, so it rings when they're meant to be sleeping. Just sensible use is what we need.
All right. Alasdair Phillips, www.powerwatch.org.uk. Thanks so much for spending this time with us.